Okay, thanks everyone for joining. My name is Ryan Lau. I want to welcome you to this webinar. We're going to be talking today. It's a really exciting topic. It's elevating your brand via website optimizations. We get a lot of these questions, to be honest, daily. Sometimes it's a couple times a day. Whereas, what can we do to do better for our brand when it comes to our website? I'm going to talk about some very tactical things you can do just to get the ball rolling and get started. For some of you that might be joining on the webinar, it might be, yes, we're already doing this, but I'm hoping that there are some tools or some approaches that might be of value to you, so you can kind of take this, whether it's to your team or to your agency partner, and say, hey, are we doing all these things? So the whole goal is kind of put together a plan to strengthen your brand. And what is that value that we can have? So quickly here, I'm going to go through a couple of slides. I don't want to read these slides. We are going to put this up on demand later. So if you want to go back and look at things, that's fine. First thing is the problem. Again, we get a lot of questions. And remember that we're going to talk a little bit about brand as far as the brand represents you when no one's around to represent your brand. So it's kind of, people often get confused about brand as a logo, and it's not. So we really want to kind of get rid of some of those preconceived notions of what brand is. And then we're going to look at tools, which is really exciting, because in some cases people might be like, well, I don't know where to start, or what do I need to do? What should I talk to my marketing department with, or my team with? And so we're going to look at some of the tools that we use. Some of them that we don't use, but we know they're industry standards, and kind of say, hey, they all do a good job. It's just how you use it to set up that. Really, we're focused on checklists, things that can be repeatable, and things that you can kind of check in on. The last but not least is the value. What kind of does it really matter? Like a lot of times we get the question is, oh, we have a website up there, or we have this, social media campaign, and it's doing what it does. Should we put more effort to it? And we kind of want to put those to bed as far as, yes, it does matter, and the effort that you put in will return. In some industries, it is more of I like to call it a digital word of mouth still, where it's a word of mouth business that you run, and you don't need to put as much effort to these elements and these tactics. However, it's still good to know them, because if your industry shifts, or if it's less of a word of mouth and more of a, hey, we need to run these campaigns, is our website ready to go? It's good to have this knowledge. And then we'll also talk about next steps. Okay, so with that said, let's jump right in. The first thing I want to talk about is brand positioning. A lot of people ask, well, yes, we have a Google Business Profile. Oh, also, let me time out real quick. We're going to be using Energy Hill as kind of the baseline. You could, if you wanted to, during the meeting, if you want to put hey, please run an audit of our site or our landing pages or whatnot, please put it in chat, and the team, whether it's Lisa or Amber, they'll jump on that, and we'll get it to you this week. But for this kind of case in point, we're going to be using Energy Hill. Again, this is important to any company or any individual. In some cases now, Google's allowing you not to necessarily have a brick and mortar location, but you can actually just have a organization, a brand that still has a Google Business Profile. It used to be called Google My Business, which is kind of really specific to brick and mortar. They've changed that to Google Business Profile, because it's not my business as in a physical location. It could be you're a band, or you're an influencer, and yet you still have a Google Business Profile. But again, this is kind of a just default search. I was in incognito. That's tough. But I always recommend search via incognito, or where you're not logged in. If you're logged in via Gmail, or even, a location, sometimes where you're searching via location, you're going to get content that isn't naturally organic, as in someone who doesn't know you. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But this is Google Business Profile. It shows off to the right-hand column. Google, I love the way they're adding more and more value to that. On the left is typically organic search. You can see that the team here at Energy Hill, we obviously tag all our images. There's a lot of things we do that are kind of above and beyond. But again, this is kind of the ideal way you want it to look. We, in the industry, advertising 10 years ago, used to say, oh, what's above the fold? And that was the key term. In this case, when someone searches for your name, your company name, you should have everything above the fold. So in a sense, the initial screen that you see, everything should be your brand. Okay, let's dig into what is brand. I keep saying that. I want to talk about two things. Brand is internal. So you might think that there's two different audiences. There's internal and external. Internal is your clients, your employees, your team, your partners, anyone who really has I hate to use the word intimate relationship, but who has they know of you. There's no like, wait, who's that company? It's they know of you. They've had some type of experience, good, bad, or ugly, with your brand. It's your internal audience. Now, outside of that, you have this external audience. And I always like to say it's two circles. It's people that know you, people that don't know you. But what do people say about your brand when you're not around to represent your brand? So the external is usually where we put our marketing material, to where we put landing page campaigns, and in a sense, try to have people find us, whether it's paid or organically, that is outside of our kind of our circle of influence. Now, it's a much bigger circle of influence. I always like to say it's global. Even if you're just hey, we're a local small business, or we're a business in the Southeast or the West Coast, you still remember that when it comes to digital, you have a global reach that you always need to be aware of. And how are you represented when it comes to your brand? Okay, common questions we get all the time. How can I rank higher? And it's something that you'll see. I'm sure you've gotten 1,000 spam messages in the last year about, oh, we're going to get you ranked number one. I always say, no, that's not the way Google works. Their algorithm has been perfected over time. It hasn't really changed. It's just they continue to tweak it and make it better. So, and not just Google. This is Bing. This is really all the search engines. But for this webinar, I'm going to be talking mostly about Google. There is science and ways in which you can do it to rank higher. Other questions we get: I search for whatever, soccer shoes, and I'm not showing up. Why? I search for design company and I'm not showing up. Why? Those are things that it's not just, oh, you build a website and all of a sudden you're ranking. In fact, there's even scenarios where if you have competitors, especially locally, that are doing the same business, or they have a similar name, not locally, and you're fighting over keyword rank, those are problems that you're going to run into. People don't read reviews. This is one we get all the time. People don't read reviews, right? We don't need to worry about that. And actually, we don't get this as much as we used to. Jump back 5 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, people didn't care. Now it's people know that reviews are important. We've seen companies that offer specific services in real estate or in mortgage, and they'll see, oh, well, why am I ranked higher? I mean, why am I not ranked higher? I have 3,000 reviews and this person only has 100, yet they're ranked higher. In that scenario, it could be longevity. It could be that you've gotten these 3,000 reviews and it's only been a month or a year, and yet the one that has 100 has had it over 5 years. And so Google is ranking them higher. So there's a lot of reasons why. And again, Google doesn't state the rules of their algorithm. I always want to make that clear, that this is only data points we've seen over the last 10 years. So take it or leave it. In some cases, I have seen that, well, they're also advertising. They also have social media campaigns running all at the same time. Everything's clicking on all cylinders, and that's why they are ranking higher. So you want to be careful when you say, oh, we're doing it, but why isn't it working? I would say that consistency and high quality content win the long game. The short game, yes, someone could get you ranked on page 1 for a week, and all of a sudden you're gone. So always think about high quality content and consistently having a plan. Okay, let's move on to the tools, because I know a lot of people say, what tools should we use? This is not a webinar on DIY. I don't ever want to say, oh, just go do this and you're going to be fine, because of the fact, if you have a marketing team or if you're working with a partner, an agency, it's best to have them help you with this. There's hundreds of tools out there. These are some of the standards, and I say that we use actually 2 of these I'm going to show you today. But I want to kind of go through these quick. SEMrush, there's a lot of others out there that kind of help you do a kind of a broader scope on how you're doing digitally from your brand. There's also GTmetrix. GTmetrix, it doesn't look good, but it really is a good speed tester for how your site's performing. Same thing, Google. I love using Google. It's pagespeed.web.dev. They really analyze your mobile first and then desktop. So it's a really powerful tool. And I'm going to shout us down because I'm about to show us in a second. And then w3.org. This has kind of been a standard, again, very, very ugly, but they've got a lot of really powerful tools that you can use to kind of see, hey, what should we focus on? And that's the key. What should you focus on? Today, I'm going to talk about the best practices. I recommend running a digital audit. I hate to use the term audit. We can call it review, because audit, I think taxes, and I start to get nervous and I just don't want to go there. But you do want to run tests on how you're doing. We're going to focus on best practices and speed today. There's a lot of different elements. Best practices we can get into the really granular, and I don't want to do that. But you'll see here, running an audit will kind of give you a baseline score. The tool we use, it gives us kind of on a scale of 1 to 100. You should really be in the 70s or 80s with most tools. And you should also be able to say, yeah, the reason we're not in the 90s is because we want to have some of these files on our site that are heavier, that might slow us down a little bit, but because of the customer user experience, we don't care as much. So you kind of have to make those tough decisions and balance them accordingly. Are you doing keyword analysis? The whole, why are we not ranking for this keyword? Well, let's analyze those keywords. Let's look at them from both SEO and SEM standpoint and see, and SEO real quick, search engine optimization, SEM, search engine marketing. Are your competitors spending money for those keywords? Organically, how do you compare with them? So those are things that you always need to consider. And then also when it comes to social, which Amber's going to talk about later, having a hashtag strategy when it comes to your social campaigns. I do think as these networks, especially Google, as they grow, they're going to start to merge some of these tools as far as how you're doing on these other networks. And I think there will be a boost there. SEO scoring. So I'm going to show you quickly what we do when it comes to scoring. I recommend the goal being with all these different tools is get a checklist. Now, the tool we use really defines based on category, role, impact, and effort. And I'm going to switch over real quick to this. What's nice about this is this allows you to say, okay, well, I want to focus on SEO and mobile. Okay, those are and let's do backlinks. Okay, so those are the three. I want to look at role, designer, developer, marketer. I'm going to say I want only high impact content, and I want easy things to do. So those are based on all of the tasks and checklists that we have. Those are the 5 things we should do. And that helps you kind of narrow in your task list. Those are high impact. So I chose high impact, and I chose easy to do. That's just because I'm lazy. So you got 5 things that I can knock out very quickly. I can work with my dev team and I work with my marketing team and say, let's knock these out. These are easy things to do for our brand. That can kind of help you get started. Now, again, when it comes to tracking everything and seeing how you're doing, you do want to kind of say, hey, here's our homepage score, here's our speed, here's all of the different things. But remember that you do need a checklist to get going. And I don't care, you could use Excel, you could use Google Sheets. I recommend having it repeatable, where some of these tasks, yes, you do it once, but then you might have to do it the next quarter or the next year. So keep that in mind when it comes to your task list and your checklist, that you don't just, okay, we did it, now we're never going to go back to it. I recommend a quarterly cadence, or at minimum a yearly. I recommend twice a year, but I guess if you say, hey, this isn't a priority, yes, at least check it yearly. Okay. The other thing is, and that's another thing that I always recommend, track your competitors too. So, and this doesn't really matter what industry, if you make widgets, compare widget company 1 and widget company 2, and you're the best widget company, compare them and track their scores, because then you can see how things will progress over time. It might not be right out the gate. It might be, month 1, wow, we're getting crushed. And then month 2, we're doing great. No, it might take 6 months. But the point is, remember, consistency and high quality content. Those are what you should focus on. Okay. Next is, need for speed. I do want to show this. So I love Google's suite of tools for checking your speed. They really knock us on mobile always, because of the fact we use Lottie files. We use some heavy files when it comes to mobile. And to be honest, I don't really care, because of the fact we're not selling widgets, and we don't really care when it comes to mobile being the fastest when it comes to our mobile experience. So we've kind of put that as a secondary priority. If you are in a very competitive market and you need clients and you need business, I would recommend you should be in the high 80s or 90s as far as speed goes. The things what I like about Google's test, and you can run this test, anyone can go into pagespeed.web.dev and put in your URL, click analyze, and it'll give you both mobile and desktop. Desktop we do a little bit better on, but you can kind of see how those scores can align. And you should make this a priority to check this. I would recommend quarterly. And it might not be, hey, Ryan, I don't have a clue about any of this stuff. Then I would say find someone on your team or in your company, or hire a partner to help you track these. because in the long term, as we move more digitally as a, not just a culture, but as a world, you need to make sure, hey, are you representing your brand well? Last but not least, I do want to talk about GTmetrix. This is another one that I recommend. It's fantastic. It is free. You don't need to have a subscription. If you have a subscription, it can be something where you track over time, which is really powerful. Because we do this for our clients, we obviously have a subscription, but you can kind of check how the structure is, how the water flow is. When I say waterfall, it means when content loads at what milliseconds. It's helpful. And I do think that, again, when it comes down to two brands that are fighting for rank, well, oh, wow, this one loads in, 1/10 of a second. This one loads in 6 seconds. That's a priority for Google. Value, as we wrap up, is the effort worth it? I do want to address this. In some cases, if your organization, your brand, you say, hey, we don't need to be ranked high, everything's word of mouth. Cool. I'm going to say, is it really everything word of mouth? Shouldn't you have some type of landing page, or shouldn't you have some type of social networks to help drive traffic and grow your network? So I always ask that question of, well, what are your goals? Is your company good and you don't need to grow? Okay, maybe that's a scenario where you don't need to. But remember that the effort you put in, as long as the consistency and the high quality is there, you will reap benefits. This is a one that I see a lot is visitors can wait 6 seconds, right? And what I see about this is that, well, yes, your visitor might wait 6 seconds. Okay. Here's the problem is that, are you thinking about the search engines? They're going to track company A versus company B. And oh, one's loading in 6 seconds and one is loading in a second. Which one do you think Google, Bing, all these search engines would rank higher? So that's something that you need to think about, is that not necessarily your users. Your users might be patient. I think that patience for users is typically a couple seconds. But you want to also compare it to, wait, what are the search engines thinking? And that's where I would say, make your test, if speed is important, make it based on search engines, not user experience. Okay. Last but not least, I want to say, create content for the value of you offer your ICP. Your ICP is your ideal customer profile. Remember, creating good content for your customers or for your clients is the goal. Okay. Yes, speed is a technical thing. There's a lot of different elements that can come into that, but remember, when it comes down to it, you always want to make sure that you're creating content that is valuable to your ICP. Okay. Next steps. I would say number one, run tests. Okay. Just they're the ones I listed in this webinar. We'll put this up for on demand later. Run tests, in most cases are free. I think even some of the higher end, higher caliber tools are free, at least as long as it's one profile or one web domain. So I would run the test and check. And it's kind of fun to see, oh, wow, how bad you're doing or how good you're doing. So I do always recommend at least run some tests. And if you don't know how, or you need help, let us know, we can help. And that's the second thing. Work with your team internally or with a partner. Finding a good person or partner to help you with this is instrumental to your business and strengthening your brand. So I always recommend that you find that person or that team that can help you. Last but not least, start now. And I know that's kind of really, but I know sometimes if you just like, oh yeah, I'll do it someday. And then it like quarters go by, years go by. I can't believe we're already back to school. It's the fall, the year's almost over. I was at Lowe's the other day. They have literally Halloween everywhere. So I recommend start now and then start tracking and work with your team or your partner to say, hey, how can we track this quarter over quarter and really set some nice goals and KPIs for yourselves. Okay. Next, I want to turn this over to Amber because we are going to be doing a webinar next quarter. We'll see.
Next few weeks.
Next few weeks, yeah. And go ahead, Amber.
Yes, so I'm very excited for this one, as we will be providing some insider insights and navigating the ins and outs of social media for the weeks to come. So this is going to kind of be a little bit about social listening, familiarizing yourself with social platforms and seeing if you're actually really targeting your audience and representing your brand on a specific platform, as well as a hashtag strategy. So definitely please keep a lookout for that. It's going to be some great informative content, and we're very excited. Keep a lookout.
It'll be great. And social media is definitely not my expertise, but I know that Amber and the team, they really do a great job at it. And especially when it comes to social listening, I think that's so cool. Some of the tools that are now available that really help inject you into conversations that you may or may not know are happening that could relate and impact your brand. So it is important to be aware of what's out there. Okay. Any question and answers? I know we went quick through that, but any Q&A? I think there's a couple questions.
Yes, there was a question regarding the SEO scoring. What tool was that?
So we use a combination of SEMrush, WooRank. There's about 3 or 4 tools we use. So again, I think the one we were using was SEMrush. But again, I'm going to tell you that it doesn't matter what score. A lot of these tools that are out there, they just give a score and they base it on, 80 different points. And I think that's key, but SEMrush does a really good job at it. There's a couple others out there, but the one that we're using is SEMrush and WooRank. They're a combination of both, and the speed. So we also say speed is also important. Some of the tools don't, I hate to say it, they don't weight speed as high as they should. And that's kind of an unfortunate thing of some of the tools. Other questions?
Yes. What is AMP and how does it help my business?
AMP? Yeah, great question. So AMP pages, Google announced AMP. I don't remember the time. I want to say it was probably 7 or 8 years ago. We can follow up on the exact date, but what it is, it's accelerated mobile pages. And it's really, in a sense, caching your website for mobile experiences to, in a sense, as soon as they click, it's loaded. And you think, oh, wow, that's awesome. No load time. And yes, it's good. However, at what cost? And that's my only concern with AMP, is that it knocks out any type of rich media content, as in video, Lottie files, anything that you'd want that is kind of ideal for a user experience when they're browsing via mobile. Those are things that, in most cases people want. And so I would say that as 5G and Wi-Fi and the internet gets less important to mobile and data. It used to be more of an issue when people only had whatever data. They had a limited amount of data. That's when it was important. Now I see it less and less important, that it's more about a good user experience. And hey, if that Lottie file needs to be up there, and Lottie is it's a simple animation, vector-based animation. It's very low weight, but it's still it makes the experience a little bit more exciting for the user. I would say determine what your business model is and then weight it accordingly. So I'd say AMP pages, or the AMP technology, I would say that Google's trying to inject it just into caching sites universally via Chrome. And I think that's a cool thing. I would just say that don't put too much effort in technology, because also next quarter it might be, oh, we're not doing it anymore. So always kind of weigh the advantages and disadvantages of any technology. But AMP is a pretty cool one. I like the initial idea 5-6 years ago. I would say now it's kind of a little bit less important in order of priority for your brand. Other questions?
Yes. Someone had asked if it's better to have a website redesign to optimize their website or add content that they have that may be unlisted.
Good question. I recommend running those tests first. If your site structure, if your speed, if there's a lot of things that are kind of lacking, then I would say you're kind of, I'm going to use the term, you're polishing a turd. There, I said it. Okay, you are. So you always need to be careful about, is our site, I hate to say it, but 3 to 5 years old? If you're in that window, it is time for at least addressing, should we do a redesign? In education, we do a lot of sites for schools and in the education learning space. And really 3 to 5 years is long for them, because you think about it, especially if you have students and faculty and teachers and staff all doing updates to the site, tons of content, tons of traffic, all of those things are good. But over time, it gets weighted. Even if you have a good optimization plan in place and you're cleaning out cache and you're doing all the things that you should be, even with all that said, 3 to 5 years, even technologies kind of come and go. So you need to be aware of that and also make decisions based on how should we set up. I think websites are still one of the biggest brand features that can represent your brand. So I would say that kind of think about redesign. Should you still put content? Yes. I would just say that remember that you should make a decision based on, hey, is it so slow that it's represented us, but not well, and we need to figure out a way to budget for a redesign and address that. So good question. Other questions?
No, that's it.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. I really appreciate everyone logging in. Again, we'll be putting this up on demand. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out, myself or Amber or Celise. Thanks so much, guys. Have a good rest of your week. Bye-bye.